Milwaukee Water Basin is in the running to be a area of concern, which would get a lot of targeted money, and Hubbard Park is one of the planning committee for Milwaukee. Hubbard Park is one of the parks that's targeted as a very important area. So they will be making a presentation in early August, but they are, somewhere in the neighborhood of 10,000. And I mean, it is an area, well, actually, this is area we already owned before, north of Hubbard, but it is an incredibly important resource that the village has and has stewardship of. And I think as they explain it to you, we'll want to at least do steps so it doesn't degrade. Because, I mean, we spend a lot of time on garlic mustard and all this other stuff. This is an area that's actually still in its original. There's things we can do to keep it from degrading and at least have an example in our community of what our forest used to look like, and it still is. So it's a resource we're the stewards of. So they'll be coming back in early August. But kind of the placeholder was 10,000, and Leanne will be looking at if that's either staff, like summer staff, or hiring like we did on Atwater Bluff to that restoration plan there. So.
Well, are you saying this is like original old growth, never been messed with?
It's second growth woods, but it's the plant community is intact. It's not garlic mustard. It's not. If you go, there's a Wisconsin. There's 2 plants of significance in that area. There's the Fort Daster, which is a very rare species, and then there's another one. But especially below Hubbard, if you go there, it's incredible. I mean, there's Jack and Pulp, but there's all kinds of plants you will not see, and in the quantity that they're there if you're looking for them. I don't, Ben, our horticulturalist, I don't recognize them all, but they're like, oh yeah, this is like, so it is, it's a very unique area. And they'll have all the information in it. So.
Okay.
Any questions on the initiative? Hearing none. Let's move on to courtroom chairs, and Trustee Meyer, I think you're up again.
All right, this has come up a number of times, and my back is getting like, these meetings are going long enough, and it's like these chairs are, I'm slowly sinking down below the table, and I think it's time. Chairs are not, I know there's different levels of chairs, but at minimum, we ought to just get some that, like you'd go to Home Depot and get that you aren't, like, you can adjust your back for each user, and we're not the only users of the room, so yeah, they've seen their useful life, unless you want to redo them, but I don't think so, no. So I would suggest we set aside some money this year to actually replace. We've replaced almost all the other seating in the place.
I support that.
President Rosick, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I as always, I don't support it, but that's fine. It's the chairs spoiled, they don't make noise anymore, and none of them are ripped. So, but I do understand if you have a bad back, and I think every employer makes accommodations for that. I mean, maybe we just get a better care for the people that have that back.
Yeah, I like that idea. I personally don't have a problem with my chair, but I understand that people have back problems, and we want to accommodate that. And again, our meetings are long, so you want to make sure that people are comfortable within the meeting.
I mean, the chairs don't bother me, but I know that they do bother others. So yeah, maybe we save some costs and replace some, and not all.
They're $600 a chair. That was the quote. That's the only reason I cringed, because it's like $7,000. I don't know.
The last quote I got was actually for $4,000. You can get lesser cost chairs if you just go to Home Depot or Office Max, but they're not going to last. So
I saw some at Costco the other day. I don't remember, I'll go back and see how much
I've
they
seen
are.
some at the curb. Yeah.
I mean, those chairs are ancient. I mean, they are, and I agree. I mean, they're really uncomfortable and they're ancient, and it's just kind of, I agree that it's time.
And just one more comment, I appreciate the chairs only because like when we look at Congress and other levels of government, I mean, that's part of the institution, the chairs are they're boardroom chairs, but I do understand all the opinions, I just want to share that.
So any other comment on the chairs initiative?
Here's the mission.
Not hearing none,
I think we're at leaf raking.
I think is handrail for New Hubbard Park.
That was covered in that
Yeah.
comment.
Yeah.
Oh, leaf raking is mine, but I think we can dispose of this one pretty quickly, because I think, Rebecca, when you and I talked, and this was one around, I'd heard from residents, possibly, some residents always have the same kind of late pickup. People tend to rake their leaves during the weekends, and
Right.
some neighborhoods always get the pickups on Thursday and Friday, but by that time the leaves might have blown around, so wondering if there's any way yearly to kind of move that around. I understand weekly would be problematic and would be very hard to schedule, but maybe yearly we kind of move around who gets their leaves picked up and when. But after talking with Rebecca, I realized, stormwater management, traffic and parking study, that might impact leaf pickup yet this year. So I think this is something that maybe we just kind of keep an eye on for next year, as opposed to just thinking about it now, because we do have things in the hopper that might impact leaf pickup already. So to make changes now wouldn't make a lot of sense if we're gonna have something that might change it, 3 months from now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
Any,
Thanks for checking.
Yeah.
all right, neighborhood association, and I'm not looking up with my computer, I don't know who submitted this one.
It was me.
Trustee Carpenter?
So just kind of in light of some of the stuff that had happened with, perennials, I thought that maybe having some neighborhood association that would allow neighbors to sort of work together if it's perennials, if they want planted, or if there's maybe some other things that they want done within their immediate proximity, that would allow neighbors to sort of work together and make that happen, and have some like additional representation, kind of similar to the way the bid has their representation. So,
Can I add to that?
sure.
So this is something that I really feel strongly about. The bid, people say, well, how would it work if there's only one neighborhood association? I think that's what I would recommend, and because it's a bid, you have a board that's made up of diverse residents rather than diverse business owners, and they come from different quadrants of the village, and when issues like this come up, it's not even perennial, it's any issue, and historic preservation, the firehouse, or anything, that's the forum where residents, rather than trying to fight it out at the village, that's the correct forum for them to talk it over, form an opinion by majority vote, and then come to the village, with an opinion and representation. That's what the businesses do. It also allows the village to have a contact person or organization to disseminate information. Like we'll always say, well, do the businesses get notice that we're changing this policy? And we'll say, well, make sure the bid knows, and they have the opportunity to send it to their members. And this would be a way for us to disseminate information even more than we do or have the ability to do today. In addition, the last thing I just want to make is neighborhood association, we're going to have so many elders, and our senior service center is doing the best they can. They do a fabulous job. But a neighborhood association would be a great partner to assist with shoveling, raking leaves for the elders. It would be a point of contact for us as a village. And I just feel it's another way, as we struggle with our communication plans and the fact that newspapers aren't around, it's just another avenue that the residents can say, and it's another form for us to get information out.
Excuse me. Can I add one other thing to that too? So, Rebecca did share the Wauwatosa, is it TOSA? they have a very comprehensive, neighborhood association that is, I mean, it's huge. And they are a 401(c), aren't they? And then their subgroups,
501(c).
sorry, 501(c), their subgroups are within their organization, so they have, I mean, it's a much bigger organization, but, I think I was sort of thinking something along those lines, and it doesn't necessarily have to be that complex, but, they have different people from each neighborhood who is representing them and could also work, we've talked about the welcoming, chairs or whatever to welcome new people into the neighborhood, along with, helping seniors, and it could just be a nice way to sort of bring everything to come somewhat full circle, that we like, the initiatives that we like to do in the community.
Trustee McKay?
I was thinking, since the age-friendly plan has some neighborhood connections kinds of things, and Shorewood connects, and then the HRC potentially would be talking about connecting neighbor to neighbor, maybe to support those things moving forward, and then once they're in process and there is a group of people who's involved that way, they could decide whether they wanted to incorporate or not, and then we could work together, rather than kind of top down. So I'd be supportive of, I would recommend like maybe setting it aside for a year and seeing how these pieces move forward, and then seeing where we stand.
I mean, I support.
Trustee Amenta, then President Rosick?
I think these things sort of bubble up naturally, and the Menlo neighborhood, they were really opposed to the snow, possibility of snow storage there, and, this issue on the perennials is, again, really galvanized people. So, I think these things sort of bubble up. I think the west side had a big concern and issue with Wilson Drive, so, each area sort of has their own. I think we should let things bubble up in a more grassroots way, the way they kind of have. So, I'm still learning about what the kinds of things the neighborhood association would do and how they would fit in, and cognizant too of how, the politics in Shorewood. Is this gonna be something that maybe will make us a little, kinder and gentler in politics, or is this just gonna be another player, in some of the more negative, is it just gonna get caught up in some of that negativity? So, at this point, I think the Menlo, they, at least a couple people down there were really upset about the perennials, and if they're, and I feel, just sticking to perennials and landscaping, I think even I think it's Newhall that dead ends into Lake Bluff, and there's like a little thing at the end there that, there's little places around the village that if neighbors want to organize and come together and beautify, obviously they have to coordinate with DPW, but, I think we should have ways of allowing people to do that. So, I don't know, maybe we don't need a neighborhood association to do that. Maybe we have some kind of garden club that, that works collaboratively with DPW and gets permission before they do things, but we let them go ahead and beautify plant-wise. So, I don't know, maybe that's another way to do it.
Well, and I think kind of to your point about, different sections of the village have different priorities, I don't wanna say priorities, but things that are really more relevant to them.
Yeah.
I do think that being able to say, well, I'm representing this area by Menlo, and this perennial issue was really important to us, but I live over here and I'm representing near Wilson, and this issue is really important to us. I do think that potentially could help some of that negativity and some of that, having the ability to have a conversation and be like, oh, well, I get why that's important to you, even though it's not super important to me, I think helps to somewhat build some bridges. And so, I sort of see that as a good thing. And, yes, I do think maybe it is a garden club that, at Ardmore, like Bluff, they can plant or whatever. But, I sort of see it as a little bit more than that. But I do think that's like a component of that.
Mm-hmm.
Trustee Warren?
President Ozak and Trustee Maher.
I don't see them as mutually exclusive. A neighborhood organization definitely does not rule out a garden association. I mean, you can have both. But I think all I'm saying is to have, it's like the businesses. Oakland and Capitol are completely different areas and business corridors in our village. There's two separate ones, trust me. So, but it's good to have the businesses talking to one another, and then they can always go to the village board on their own and say whatever they want. But the point is just to have those conversations in a forum that is structured in a way that the village isn't the oversight, like the look down where you have to come to Village Hall with all of the problems, and you don't talk to residents on the other side before you get here. It's okay if they don't agree. They don't have an opportunity to come to the village on their own and represent their neighborhood. This is actually, I see it more as facilitating discussion before it gets to our level, as well as an opportunity for us to disseminate information. Those are the two main reasons of why I'm very supportive.
For those reasons, I like the idea as well, Trustee Maher.
Yeah, I guess I've seen, I'm not real clear if we're talking one association for the whole village. I was pretty heavily involved, there was a UWM neighborhood group of all their associations, like Cambridge Wood alone is an association, Murray Hill just is they're not large areas, Water Tower's a separate one.
I would
And they're very neighborhood focused and doing parties and stuff. What I've seen is like Menlo, when the snow, Shorewood Boulevard, neighbors organized themselves when the bus route was gonna switch down to Shorewood Boulevard.